Hi, I'm Linda Augsburg, Executive Editor for American Patchwork and Quilting Magazine. And on this Show Me How video, brought to you by Baby Lock and the Crescendo Machine, we're going to show you how to make this easy patchwork placemat. The first thing you do for this project is sort those 5-inch squares into two piles. One pile of 21 will be the back, and the other pile of 21 will be the front. For the front pieces, you're going to cut those across in both directions through the center, making 4 piles, like this one will be, of 2.5-inch squares. So to make one placemat front, you'll need 2 stacks or 42 of the 2.5-inch squares. You're going to lay those out in an arrangement of 7 squares across and 6 rows down, so that you'll have a placemat that's going to be 14.5 by 12.5. Now you can see here, after I laid mine out and got an arrangement that was pleasing of color, I then stacked them and put them on a mat that I could carry from my workstation over to where I'm actually going to sew. I like to use things like this cutting mat or a ruler, something that can help me carry those and keep everything in order so that when I sew, I don't have to refigure out where I was going to put things. First thing I'll do then is sew each row together and then sew the rows together. And I've got a tip for making sure you do that just right. So as you're sewing those pieces together, the first thing that I did was make sure that every square is trimmed perfectly to 2.5 inches square, because that's the first step. If you're starting with the right size and your seam allowance is the right size, then everything should piece together perfectly and match up. The second thing I did is, as I was sewing square to square, I made sure that, for instance, here you can see the first square is 2.25 now because we've got one seam. So I've got my 1/4 inch extra here, and then I've got 2 inches. My second square, which has both sides seams sewn, is exactly 2 inches. And then this end square that I just added on is 2.25, again, because I haven't yet attached anything to this side. And I measured as I went across the row to make sure that every seam was accurate and that I was sewing those squares accurately. That's really a great way. If you do that for every row, you're going to ensure that everything goes together beautifully. Also, remember, the first row you'll press all the seams in one direction, the next row you'll press them in the other. And that'll help you nestle those seams up together when you're sewing row 1 to row 2. And those seam allowances will just stay to one side or the other to help you keep that really precise intersection. So for the backing, you're going to arrange those 5-inch squares in an arrangement that's pleasing. Now you're going to cut both backing pieces from this piece of fabric. So you're going to sew 7 pieces of fabric together, and you're going to make 3 rows. You'll cut 29 this way and 12.5 that way, and then cut it in half. That's going to give you the 2 backs for your 2 placemats. Now that you've got your placemat top all pieced together, you're going to sew on the rickrack. As we cut earlier, we're going to have that be a 14.5-inch piece of rickrack, and again, this is 1.5-inch wide rickrack. Now my rickrack is cotton, so it does fray a little on the end when I cut it. Therefore, what I'm going to turn back is 1.25 inches total. I will go back once this is finished and hand sew along these edges to make that a nice finished edge on the other side of the placemat. Now you're going to line up the rickrack so that the valleys are lined up with the fabric edge. So you can see you're not going to have it show like this. You want to make sure it's just lined up right there. And this is going to seem a little backwards. First, that we turned this over on this edge. And second, that the rickrack is coming this way. But you'll see when I turn it back, the rickrack's going to extend beyond that side seam. And you want to make sure when it does that this turn under edge is on the back side of the placemat. You also want to make sure when you're pinning that folded edge is 1/4 inch away from the bottom edge of the placemat. You don't want to get this edge caught in this bottom seam. So as you see, I've flipped over the placemat to sew so I can have the edge of my presser foot be my guide for that scant 1/4 inch. In addition, you can also, because this is going to be hidden, I'm sewing with a longer stitch, more of a basting stitch. So now that I've got the rickrack attached to both ends of the placemat front, and I've got the fusible fleece on the back of the placemat back, I'm going to put those two pieces right side together with that rickrack sandwiched between like we had it, and I'm going to sew around 3 sides, and then the 4th side I'm going to leave an opening in the bottom edge, not the rickracked edge, but one of the unrickracked edges for turning. Once I've sewn that opening closed by hand, I'm going to top stitch along the edges, and then you're ready to go. So that's all there is to making this cute pair of placemats. Be sure to go to allpeoplequilt.com/showmeHowPlacemat to download the instructions for the project and have a blast making a set of these for everyone you know.